Fade, I think I'll get us started. Just a big hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on what's new in school food. Bienvenue à notre webinaire Quoi de neuf en alimentation scolaire. My name is Carolyn Webb. I live and I work in Ottawa on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe, and I'm the Knowledge Mobilization Coordinator for the Coalition for Healthy School Food. Today's event has simultaneous translation and will have speakers speak in both languages. So we'd encourage all of you to use the interpretation function and set it to the language of your choice. And here are some instructions for doing so. So you can see the little globe symbol that I believe is the one on your bar. So bonjour, l'événement aujourd'hui bénéficie d'une traduction simultanée et les présentateurs et présentatrices s'exprimeront dans les deux langues. Alors, nous vous encourageons tous à utiliser la fonction d'interprétation et à choisir la langue de votre choix. So we've organized today's webinar to share stories and updates relating to school food programs. And we have a great set of speakers to share stories from the national to the local levels. But before we invite them to speak, I'll just share a few housekeeping items. At this time, we'd invite you to change your name so that it includes your name, pronoun, organization, province, or anything you want to include. We'll have about 40 minutes for presentations and then a short question and answer period, provided there's time at the end. While our presenters are sharing their remarks, I'd encourage you to put your questions into the chat box, and then we can open it up for discussion after we've heard from all the speakers, if there's time at the end. And please feel free to share any questions or comments in French or English. Our webinar will be an hour, and then our members meeting will start at around 1 o'clock Eastern time. And that part of today's events will be for coalition members, but we also welcome non-members if you'd like to join the discussion. One last comment is that we'll be recording the presentations to share publicly afterwards. And we're looking to only record the presenters, but sometimes we'll be flipping between presenter view and other things, and we might capture some of the participants. And your video, we'll try not to, but if you do want to make sure your video isn't recorded, I'd suggest turning your webcam off. And so having shared all of those details, I am just going to bring us to the presenter part of our presentation. Just for the presenters, we have simultaneous interpretation, and so I would invite all of you to speak a bit slower than you might sometimes do, and just remember that that function is happening, and the interpreters do need a bit of time and space to just make sure they can get a clear interpretation. So I would like to introduce our first speaker, Hugues Vaillancourt, who is going to speak. He's the Director General of ESDC, and he'll speak about the federal government's What We Heard report.
Just trying to unmute myself. I think I worked.
You're good.
So,
yep.
So I'm going to skip the first part, which was introducing myself. So I'm Hugues Vaillancourt from Employment and Social Development Canada. I am joining you today from Gatineau, which is located on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation, and is a sacred gathering place for many First Nations. It's a pleasure to meet you all. And thank you for inviting me to this webinar to present the findings of the What We Heard report released less than a month ago. So I think there is a presentation before so Carolyn, just from, I think I've shared it in advance. How do you want to proceed? It may be.
I don't actually have it, but if you have it, it would be wonderful if you could present it.
I think it would make more sense to look at the screen than to look at my face. So let me see. Share screen. Can you see it?
I can see it, but it is we can see the notes at the side.
Fix that in a second.
Perfect.
Hold on. Someone had to. Okay, can you? I'm just.
It's also fine like that. So.
Apologies. I'll catch up. Okay, so avant de rentrer dans les conclusions ou ce qu'on a entendu dans le rapport, je vais commencer par brièvement discuter des activités qui sont sous-jacentes aux résultats du rapport. Il y avait différents volets dans notre programme, dans nos engagements. D'une part, avec les parties prenantes. Sous cette composante-là, on a notamment eu un questionnaire en ligne où on a reçu plus de 5200 réponses, de même que 76 soumissions écrites. Donc, je pense probablement au-delà de nos espérances. Ensuite, on a également mené une série de tables rondes avec différents intervenants sur différents sujets. Également, le Conseil consultatif national sur la pauvreté ont également mené des consultations auprès des personnes en situation de pauvreté ou de d'insécurité alimentaire pour informer les rapports. Et finalement, en compagnie de Children's First Canada, on a discuté de la question de l'alimentation en milieu scolaire directement avec les jeunes et les enfants. We've also, in addition to our stakeholder engagement, we've also engaged with Indigenous partners in provinces and territories. So let's move on to what we've heard. As I mentioned, we released this on Halloween, so October 31st, the report was tabled. And as I mentioned, we've heard a lot from our stakeholders. We organized our findings across 7 different themes, which are on this slide. I won't go one by one, but I think the key points there in terms of support, there's been a strong support for the online questionnaire, kind of made it pretty abundantly clear about the support for national school food policy. And I'll dig a little bit deeper into some of the other themes there. So I'll quickly try to catch up the time I lost at the beginning there. In terms of some of the perspectives that we've heard from stakeholders, I think it's pretty clear that the vast majority of stakeholders kind of pointed out of the various types of benefits associated with school food programs. They're not just, feeding the kids. There are a number of different benefits that are associated with school food and benefits and potential for broader social level impacts, including around food waste, local food economies. And there's, educational literacy and different skills that are also part of how school meal programming can be developed. We've heard a lot on the Indigenous engagements about how to respond and how to be mindful of Indigenous governments' role and providing school meal programmings that are responsive to Indigenous children, obviously from our Indigenous engagement, but also more broadly around just engagements from all across stakeholders about how key that component was and should be reflected in the policy. Of course, there's been lots of good news shared and lots of positive, but there's also been some challenges that were highlighted during our engagement around some of the current challenges around some of the infrastructure gap that exists, some of the challenges sometimes with personal shortages, and some of the limitations around data to help inform programming. In terms of the things that stakeholders have highlighted as to what they would like to see in the policy, I think there's a couple of words that I think helps crystallize that. I think flexibility has been a recurring theme from all stakeholders around how the importance of allowing for flexibility to really seize some of the best practices and allowing local level decisions in terms of how to build on existing programming. I think the other issue that I would point out is around stigma or mitigating any stigma around access to school food programming as a key barrier to participation. And so it's that systematically came up as something that really need to be built into and really inform a policy to prevent stigma.
Qui doit être vraiment informé pour empêcher la stigmatisation, pour permettre... Oh.
OK. Il y a eu la compétition. And the children engagement, so as I mentioned at the outset, we did engagement with youth and children, and it was super interesting to go into school and talk to children directly. And a lot of actually pretty insightful views shared by children. And so very informative and really in reinforcing, I think, what we've heard from other stakeholders, but in their own words, and certainly kind of not shy away from their opinions and wanting to be part of and wanting to inform, for example, what they eat as part of the school meal programming. So very, very interesting component. So what we're on next steps now. So what we are focused now is on developing and refining the national school food policy using the insights that we've obtained from our engagement. As we continue our work to develop the policy, we remain committed to collaborating with provinces, territories, Indigenous partners, and key stakeholders. They've been all part of the journey, and I think will continue to do so going forward. We're also working with a number of federal colleagues, federal departments, as we move forward on this issue, on the policy. We recognize that with the rising costs of food, putting additional pressures on families and exacerbating food insecurity, and investment in school meal programming could be part of a solution to help alleviate these serious issues. That's why, in addition to the development of the policy, we are continuing to explore different mechanisms and approaches that could be used to allocate funding for programming if and when federal funding for school food is secure. Thanks again for inviting me to this webinar, and I look forward to the discussion. And I hope I didn't take too much time.
No, fantastic. Thank you so much. It's really great to have you here and to share the insights from the what we heard report. And we'd invite everyone to put any questions you have in the chat box, and we will hopefully have time at the end to address those. We are going to the next speaker. We have invited Amberley Ruetz from the University of Saskatchewan to report back on the meetings that she attended as a part of the School Meal Coalition in Paris and some of her recent research on the economic rationale for school food programs. Amberley is currently on a train to Ottawa right now. She will be coming for a really great event we have planned for tomorrow that we'll share in a few speakers' time, but she has prepared a video for us instead that we want to show about her time at the Paris Summit and the return on investment and economic rationale work that she's been doing. And so if anybody has questions, we can probably answer some of them, or we can direct you directly to Amberley to try to answer some of them afterwards. So I will just share Amberley's video now. Can folks see that? All right, and now the big test is whether the volume works for everybody.
Hi, for those that don't know me, my name is Amberley Ruetz, and I am a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Saskatchewan and co-chair of the CAP's School Food Research Working Group. Today, I was asked in my 7-minute overview to give a report back on my time in Paris at the first School Meals Coalition Global Summit, and a few highlights from a new report I completed with some colleagues about the economic rationale for investing in school meal programs for Canada. So to start with Paris, this past October was the first Global School Meals Summit, which was to report on progress since this new body was created. So I was asked to attend on behalf of the Coalition for Healthy School Food, as Debbie had another commitment, and I'm linked up to the Global Research Consortium and have done some work in that area around developing the Canada case study, which is the overview of school food program operation in Canada. So at this summit, there were 59 countries in attendance and over 150 NGOs attending this first Global School Meal Summit in Paris last month. So at the proceedings, there were 28 countries that reported on their progress since joining. There were 7 new countries that joined the coalition. And And there's lots to report here, but just to note one, there were a number of partnerships announced with partnering agencies with the School Meals Coalition to produce a number of new resources. And one that I wanted to share was the School Nutrition Technical Assistance Facilities Initiative. And that is being reported to help do a number of things, including getting better access to school meals financing for countries, improve policy and legal frameworks, and increase participation in homegrown school feeding, or what we call farm to school here in Canada. And lastly, the next big announcement was that Brazil, as a new co-chair of this group, would be hosting the next Global School Meal Summit in 2025. And if you'd like to see a full overview of the proceedings, that can be found on the Coalition Healthy School Foods blog post that I wrote, and that links to the full details of the proceedings. And I would be remiss not to note that myself, along with Breakfast Clubs of Canada, or Judith Berry, and I were there representing Canadian school meal programs. And then pictured in the center, there is Heidi Kessler, who is a program manager with the Global Child Nutrition Foundation. And they have been leading the work on developing the world's data and collecting and analyzing the world's data on school meals programs. So they also had an announcement that they will be hosting their next forum at the end of 2024. So more details will follow about that. Now on to the report. So by way of introduction, this report was commissioned by the Errol Family Foundation, as they thought a missing piece, perhaps in the federal puzzle, was developing an economic rationale for investing in school meal programs for Canada. And this was a look at the multiple ways that there's a multi-sectoral impact of investing in school meals, particularly in high-income countries. So myself and some colleagues, namely Gabrielle Edwards and Flora Zhang, compiled this into a summary report on the multitude of benefits that we can expect with school meals and making that investment here at home in Canada. So you can access this report on my website under the Publications tab. And with that being said, I'm going to dive into 3 key points of the many that are included within this document that you can check out at a later time. So the first that I think is really pertinent right now, given the affordability crisis, is that how access to school meals for parents can provide immediate relief to household budgets. So looking at data from the USA and their access to their free breakfast and lunch programs, which are rapidly growing and were completely free during the pandemic, taking those expenditure savings to the household budget, families could expect to save in Canadian dollars between $130 to $190 per child per month on their grocery bills. And this means that if those meals are provided at school for free, that money could be spent within the household food budgets. And another way of looking at this is that families with 2 children could save between about $2,600 and $3,800, or 19 to 28% of their food budget over the course of a school year, or 10 months. So really big savings and impact in terms of providing immediate relief to families right now. Looking at some long-term impacts, there were 2 studies from Scandinavia, but I'll just speak to the one from Sweden here. And they found that an intervention of free school meals over the course of a student's elementary year span, or about 9 years, demonstrated to increase students' lifetime earnings on average of 3% for all students. And interestingly, there was a higher benefit to those from the lowest quartiles of household income, to as much as 6%. So from this differential, It implies that the access to free school lunch in Scandinavia through this time over the course of a child's lifespan actually reduce social economic inequalities in adulthood. So it's not just the short term, it's also the long term that this program can have massive impacts. And when you have, increased household earnings, you have higher tax brackets, you have higher GDP, and you can see the ripples throughout the economy, just to summarize in short. Lastly, by way of summary, another big takeaway is that when we just look at the return on investment amongst high-income countries, as we know, this has been well documented, and I should rather say a plethora of other studies in developing nations, we see that amongst high-income countries, at least a 2.5 to 7x return on investment in human health and economic benefits in high-income countries. The references here for the studies are respectively the United States to the Sweden study. Just to close, the other really interesting piece here is that when the economists, with the study that I'm referring to, looked at the differential, the comparative benefit of Sweden's school lunch program to a very standard program in the US in terms of the Head Start program, which is an early child nutrition program for low-income children, ages 3 to 5, a targeted program, they found that the Universal Free Lunch program had a higher benefit to cost ratio at twice the rate. Again, showcasing the impacts and the return on investment for investing in a national school food program. By way of closing, as I know I'm out of time, I just wanted to note that there are some resources coming your way. Some of the key findings of the report will be done in visuals or graphics and will be made into PowerPoint slides, and all this will be available on the Aral Food Institute's websites in a few weeks' time, so stay tuned. And sorry I can't join you for question and answers, but please feel free to contact me here at my emails. Thanks so much. Take care.
We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Oh, thank you. Just wanted to share a big thank you to Amberley, and I'll give her a big thank you in person tomorrow. But as I said, if you have questions that came up in this conversation, you can put them in the chat and we can either address them if we can or bring them to Amberley and she can respond to folks if she can and if we have your email. So that would be great. Now, we have had some challenges. We reached our 100 max capacity on Zoom and have been working to expand the capacity. And I think we've been able to, so sorry if you have only been able to get into the webinar now. Yeah, we apologize for that. And we'll have the recording available afterwards and we can share it with you afterwards. But yeah, deep apologies that that's happened. Our next speaker is Jean-François. Vous êtes ici?
Yes,
wait.
I'm there. No worries. I managed to get through.
Okay, that's great. Do you need a moment to settle? And should we go to the next speakers, or are you good to speak?
No, you go good. I'm good.
Okay, merci. Alors, maintenant, j'ai le plaisir de vous présenter Jean-François Archambault du Tablée des chefs pour discuter leur programme. À vous, Jean-François.
So I can do, Carolyn, I can do this in English, no problem.
We'd love for you to speak in French if you can.
Yes?
Yeah, c'est parfait.
I mean, okay, no problem. And if there's any questions, I have no problem.
Thank you so much.
Donc, merci de l'opportunité et de l'invitation pour parler des projets de la Tablée des chefs au niveau de la littératie alimentaire. Peut-être vous dire, vous m'entendez bien, oui?
Oui, c'est parfait.
Parfait. Donc, peut-être vous parler. En fait, je suis vraiment, vraiment content de voir comment on réussit à faire bouger les choses tous ensemble. Je dois vous le partager. Je pense que on n'a jamais été autant ensemble et unis et briser les silos. Je pense que c'est important aux yeux du gouvernement pour qu'eux bougent finalement et qu'ils sentent que tout le monde est mobilisé dans la même et veut aller dans la même direction. Donc, je pense que ça, c'est la première des choses que moi, ça fait 20 ans que je travaille dans le secteur. J'ai fondé la Tablée des chefs en 2002. Et je suis vraiment heureux de voir tout le monde se mettre ensemble, incluant le Club des petits déjeuners qui est avec nous. Et on travaille malgré nos différences, malgré nos couleurs, malgré nos intérêts qui sont communs, mais aussi on a tous nos organisations, on a tous nos réalités. Je pense que c'est important de continuer de travailler ensemble puis de trouver les bridges puis les synergies entre nos actions. Donc, peut-être vous parler des brigades culinaires. C'est le projet phare de la Tablée des chefs. On a commencé à l'époque dans 4 écoles secondaires avec des indices de défavorisation les plus élevés à la Commission scolaire de Montréal à l'époque avec Diane de Courcy. Je vous parle de ça, c'était en 2006 quand on a commencé les premiers ateliers. On était à Saint-Henri, on était à Pierre-du-Puy, dans Hochelaga-Maisonneuve et dans le quartier Saint-Michel, à Louis-Joseph Papineau. Ce sont encore des écoles qui sont cotées 10 en ce moment. Ça fait plus de 17 ans, puis ces écoles-là sont encore dans les mêmes indices. C'est dommage. Mais on arrive à faire des actions qui sont quand même intéressantes. Et les brigades culinaires, en fait, c'est un programme parascolaire, mais qui agit aussi dans la vie étudiante. Donc, on jumelle un chef à une école et on intervient pour 24 semaines dans l'année scolaire. On crée une place, en fait, principalement les anciens locaux d'économie familiale qu'on reprend parce que les cours d'économie familiale ont été abandonnés au Québec. Et on met en place, on renipe un peu ces locaux-là parce qu'ils ont été un peu défraîchis ou ils ont changé de vocation. Donc, on ramène la vocation originale et on ramène certains équipements, on rééquipe les cuisines avec des accessoires de cuisine et surtout, on jumelle un chef passionné qui a envie de partager ses connaissances et développer les compétences des jeunes pour 20 à 25 jeunes. Donc, c'est gratuit. Les jeunes peuvent s'inscrire comme ils s'inscriraient à l'équipe de basketball ou à la troupe de théâtre de l'école ou aux bandes de musique de l'école. Et ils vont vivre l'expérience des brigades. Ils vont jumeler en équipe. Donc, quand on parle de brigade, ben, c'est une équipe de basket, une troupe de théâtre. Ben, dans une cuisine, une cuisine ne peut pas fonctionner sans travailler en brigade. Donc, les brigades, c'est l'équipe. Et donc, il y a 4 à 5 équipes de 4 à 5 jeunes, tout dépendant de l'espace disponible dans les écoles, de la dimension du local et des espaces pour pouvoir recevoir les jeunes. Il y a un chef qui vient à chaque semaine à la rencontre de ces jeunes-là pour partager différents ateliers, différentes thématiques. On a monté un programme. On est heureux, on est chanceux à la Tablée de chef maintenant d'avoir une équipe de nutritionnistes incroyable, très, très déterminée et très compétente et très passionnée dans ce qu'ils font. Donc, on jumelle vraiment la cuisine, la nutrition et on a monté un programme, je pense, de très grande qualité qu'on a toujours bonifié, qu'on a toujours évalué aussi. Et maintenant, ce programme-là est offert au Québec grâce à différents financements qu'on est allé chercher à l'époque de Québec en forme, transité vers le secrétariat à la jeunesse, des partenaires corporatifs qui, dans leur investissement communautaire, comme IGA, Sobase, qui est un de nos très grands partenaires au niveau des brigades culinaires. On le sait, là, on ne pourrait pas faire des ateliers de cuisine sans avoir des aliments. Donc, IGA nous aide avec cette portion-là. Et on est heureux, on est chanceux de recevoir 50% de financement gouvernemental pour le programme des brigades culinaires. Donc, c'est-à-dire que le ministère de l'Agriculture, des Pêcheries et de l'Alimentation au Québec finance 50% du programme des brigades culinaires. Les écoles payent 2 000 $ pour le programme. Le programme coûte environ 11 000 $. Et le reste, c'est séparé 50% ministère de l'Agriculture. Par la suite, c'est les financements privés, philanthropiques, des fondations comme la Fondation Marcel et Jean Coutu et d'autres fondations. Donc, pendant ces semaines-là, le chef vient à la rencontre des jeunes. Les jeunes ont une petite compétition entre eux et à la fin du programme, on leur fait vivre une compétition culinaire inspirée du réseau du sport étudiant, donc vraiment une compétition d'abord au niveau de l'école entre eux. Et on nomme la meilleure brigade de l'école. Et par la suite, il y a une compétition inter-école régionale et on amène finalement au national et on a une finale où on amène les 4 meilleures brigades du Québec où on crée des sous-régions. Et on a finalement la meilleure équipe de l'extérieur du Québec maintenant. Donc, on fait encore une fois une compétition par province. et qui est virtuel jusqu'à temps qu'on soit à un certain niveau d'école dans certaines provinces. Ça s'en vient parce que juste au Manitoba, on a 18 écoles déjà qui sont inscrites dans la grande région de Winnipeg. C'est vraiment super stimulant de voir l'intérêt pour le programme à l'extérieur du Québec. On dépasse maintenant les 50 écoles à l'extérieur du Québec. C'est vraiment, vraiment intéressant. On a commencé avec un financement de la Fondation McConnell pour faire un projet pilote. On avait seulement 4 écoles et aujourd'hui, on est rendu à plus de 50. Puis le plan serait d'être dans 150 écoles d'ici les 3 prochaines années au niveau des brigades à l'extérieur du Québec. Sachez que 50% des écoles sont données en francophonie et l'autre 50% sont données en anglais. Et au Québec, on a des écoles du English School Board qui aussi donnent le programme en anglais. Donc, le programme est bilingue, traduit. Les documents de le cahier de l'élève, le cahier du formateur sont aussi bilingues. Et ce programme-là, maintenant, au Québec, est donné dans 250 écoles secondaires. Donc, sachez qu'il y a environ 400 écoles secondaires publiques au Québec. On est dans 250 de ces 400 écoles-là. Et on a déposé au gouvernement du Québec, au ministère de l'Agriculture et à Solidarité sociale, un plan de financement qui nous amènerait à pleine accessibilité d'ici les 5 prochaines années. Donc, imaginez-vous, après tout le travail qu'on a fait, d'arriver à un programme, je suis un petit peu émotif, d'arriver à un programme qui rejoindrait plus de 8000 jeunes au Québec. Donc, c'est quand même assez impressionnant. Et c'est vraiment un travail, vous le savez, vous travaillez tous très fort dans chacune de vos régions, dans chacune de vos villes, avec chacun de vos gouvernements, puis des partenaires que vous mobilisez. C'est un travail qu'on porte et qu'on travaille très fort. Et quand on a des résultats comme ça, ben, c'est sûr qu'après 20 ans de travailler là-dessus, ben, ça nous apporte un certain réconfort. Mais on ne s'assoit pas sur nos lauriers, comme on dit. Et on travaille fort pour améliorer le programme constamment, le rendre accessible, comprendre la réalité de chacun des milieux et essayer de s'adapter au milieu. Puis au niveau des écoles, il y a toujours un intervenant scolaire qui est mobilisé.
Deux minutes, Jean-François.
Il y a certaines conditions aussi qui sont nécessaires. Peut-être rapidement, là, en vous parlant du programme Cuisine ton avenir, qui est un programme qui rejoint les jeunes issus de la protection de la jeunesse en transition vers la vie autonome, 15 à 19 ans. Donc, vraiment une période cruciale pour leur capacité de développer leur autonomie alimentaire avant la prise en charge de leur alimentation. On va se le dire beaucoup trop tôt dans leur vie parce que la moyenne canadienne qui quitte la maison, c'est entre 22 et 24 ans. Ces jeunes-là vont quitter la maison, vont devoir être autonomes à 18, 19 ans. Et donc, développer leur autonomie alimentaire, c'est une grande priorité de la Tablée des chefs et des intervenants du milieu de la protection de la jeunesse partout au pays. Donc, au Québec, on est dans plus de 60 milieux. Et partout au Canada, on est dans tous les centres jeunesse au Québec, en fait. Et partout au Canada, on a distribué plus de 3000 trousseaux brise-glace pour initier les jeunes à la cuisine avec un intervenant ou un parent significatif pour justement briser l'anxiété, diminuer l'anxiété dans cette phase-là qui est cruciale du cheminement vers la vie autonome. Parce qu'on le sait, les jeunes, on développe une grande anxiété. Ils ne savent pas comment ils vont pouvoir se débrouiller. Imaginez avec l'inflation, le coût des aliments. Si on ne sait pas cuisiner, on a un vrai gros problème. D'abord, cuisiner pour soi, mais aussi si on a des gens avec nous, une famille. Nous, on a 5 enfants à la maison. Je ne peux pas croire que des gens qui se retrouvent avec un budget extrêmement restreint et qui arrivent à nourrir leur famille actuellement, c'est extrêmement compliqué. On le voit un peu partout. Donc, merci de nous avoir donné l'opportunité de parler un peu plus des programmes. Si vous avez des questions, je serai ouvert aux questions. Vous pouvez toujours m'écrire aussi. Puis, on a une équipe très dynamique, Geneviève Massé, que vous avez sûrement déjà rencontrée, qui est notre directrice de programme pour le volet éduqué à la Tablée. Donc, merci encore pour l'opportunité de partager notre passion pour l'éducation alimentaire des jeunes.
Merci beaucoup, Jean-François. Et comme des personnes ont dit dans la chat, félicitations.
Merci. Merci beaucoup.
C'est grand. Le travail de votre équipe est tellement inspirant et nous apprécions vraiment que vous l'avez partagé avec nous. Si vous avez des questions pour Jean-François, vous pouvez les mettre dans le boîte de chat. Et il y a une question déjà. Et il a été répondu. OK.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup. So our next speakers are Tammy Shakotko and Stef Foster, and they will be speaking to you about the Saskatchewan School Food Development Project. Tammy and Stef.
Hello, I guess I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. Everyone can see that?
Yep, looks good to me.
Okay. So thanks for having us, Carolyn. Very excited to speak about our project today. So we're here on behalf of the School Food Development Project, and it's out of the University of Saskatchewan. Our PI is Dr. Rachel Engler-Stringer, and I believe she's on the Zoom somewhere. Myself and my colleague, Tammy Shakotko, are going to sort of share some information about our project today. You should know that we have a couple of other amazing staff on our project. Jerry Burgess and Shay Quinn are helping with all this amazing work. And the coalition is an important partner, as well as Chep Good Food and Canadian Feed the Children. So a little bit about the design of our project. Again, we're out of the University of Saskatchewan, funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada's Healthy Canadians and Communities Fund. We're working with 12 schools across Saskatchewan, 3 in Saskatoon and 9 from Meadow Lake Tribal Council. And we're operating out of treaties 6, 8, and 10 territories and the homeland of the Métis. Meadow Lake is largely Cree and Dene communities. And as you can see from the map of Saskatchewan there, we're a very diverse spread. So the Meadow Lake communities are anywhere from or about 600 kilometers away from each other is the longest distance, 500 kilometers away from each other. So very sort of isolated communities in some cases, that has created a whole sort of series of new learnings. And the main goal of our project is to look at the characteristics of ideal school food programs. And then we are sort of centering Indigenous communities, Indigenous ways of knowing, and Indigenous food sovereignty in the discussion around the national school food policy.
Thanks, Stef. So the School Food Development Project is a co-design model. So this means that the Meadow Lake Tribal Council, as well as the Saskatoon Public Schools, are considered equal partners in the work that is being done and in the design. So the model is ensuring a respectful engagement among the individuals, the staff, the organizations, the community, and the project as they move forward. One of the important principles that we follow are the OCAP principles. This is the Indigenous ownership, control, access, and possession related to the community research, the information that is gathered, the data that is collected and produced. So our project has been really clear from the beginning about our intentions around respecting and honoring these principles. And we're very open to the continuous engagement about how information is shared and handled as we go through the process. Another key aspect of the project is the support for community food sovereignty. So the project recognizes that food is not only a human right, but also an important aspect of Indigenous health, well-being through the connection that food has to the land, language, relationships, and culture. So this ensures that communities have access to sustainable food systems and that we advocate that they're driven by and respond to the needs of the community as well.
So some of our key themes and takeaways, and these have all come from the schools themselves. So we've done interviews, surveys, we're getting into focus groups with students, environmental scans, so a variety of tools we've collected. There's many themes that sort of appear at all the schools across the board, some that pop up here and there. The programs that we're looking at are diverse. Every school has a different model. They're often sort of piecemeal, but some of the schools are offering lunch, some are just offering breakfast, some have nothing at all when we started and are now offering snack programs. So very, very diverse sort of section of schools. One of the main themes that came up is there's a need for long-term and stable funding. We know, of course, that these programs cannot operate without long-term funding or without funding, and having those funds be long-term available and ongoing, so we're not continually rewriting grant applications year over year, is very beneficial. It can be really time consuming for schools to not only write for these grant opportunities, but also report back and follow up and ensure that they're purchasing within their agreements. So funding is a huge aspect that comes up with every school that we've worked with. Another item that a theme that comes up frequently is the need for staffing and training opportunities. So schools frequently share that their cook is a crucial piece. Their school cook is a crucial piece to the success of their programs. And most school cooks are not professional food service workers in Saskatchewan. They are moms from the community or, other folks who are affiliated with the school who are just there to help and support. These are low wage jobs. They're not full time. They don't even last a full year, of course, because of summer holidays. So it's hard to keep staff and reduce turnover. And there's very little succession planning for things like retirement or when someone moves on to a new opportunity. So this is a very crucial piece of the puzzle where we're finding lots of gaps. Staff have expressed their concern. They would like to be trained better, to receive more opportunities for professional development. And we would like to be able to bring into schools folks who are already trained in institutional food service in some ways. And then a third point that keeps coming up is the equipment and infrastructure piece. So school kitchens are often comprised of residential appliances, like the same stove you would have in your kitchen at home, which isn't the most efficient system when you're cooking for 150 kids. Same with fridges and freezers and other equipment. So we're looking to scale up from residential tools to commercial level tools. This means that the process of cooking will be more efficient and effective. We can serve more kids eat more easily. Also looking at things like food storage. If you want to, particularly if you're in a community that's, 600 kilometers from a grocery store, you're going to need to have adequate fridge and freezer space to store fresh food when we're talking about offering, nutritionally robust programs. So that's another big piece, the equipment and infrastructure.
Okay, so the fourth piece is access to high quality food resources that are also reasonably priced. So at this time, schools they do share concerns about the high cost of market foods. And then not only that, the inconsistencies that they find in the quality and availability of the foods they require in their programs. Some staff have said that when the cost of food is high, the first thing they cut off of the school food budget is fruits and vegetables. And that is also, that means that they're cutting entire foods out of their program in order to accommodate their budgets.
1 more minute, Tammy.
Okay. So schools also send cooks out to purchase food and traveling 300 kilometers away in order to access lower cost food. So the travel to receive food, we're questioning whether that is more cost effective or less cost effective than food delivery. And we're really unsure which model suits, but again, probably that's individual based on the community location. The fifth theme that we find is that schools indicate that programming must be integrated and be culturally supportive. Students and staff alike value culturally important foods and that they be integrated into the school food programming. So we learn a lot from the land-based programming that exists in communities and how those are able to integrate into school food programming. Students also want the food programs to be responsive to their needs. They want to have the programs be affordable, free, and stigma-free. And they also want the programs to recognize the connection between the food and their health and well-being. And so students want the food to contribute overall to their health and well-being. And so teacher anecdotes align with what we know now about the evidence that students are better able to concentrate, they have better attendance, behavior, and learning outcomes when they have access to food at school. And so, yeah, that's our program in a nutshell. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much, Stef and Tammy, and yeah, presenting to all of us. I know I've been kind of just hearing from you as the project's been developed, and it's just really great to hear more about it and the principles that have gone into thinking about how to make it happen, and just really interesting to hear the reflections at this point. And yeah, we'll be watching and excited to hear how the rest of it unfolds. So thank you for sharing today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so our last speaker is Brent Mansfield, and he is on a plane to Ottawa today. I will share a 1-minute video of his LunchLAB video that was filmed by CBC, and we'll share with everybody on the call a 7-minute video, if you haven't seen it yet, of his program. So.
Canada is one of the only developed countries that does not have a federal nutrition program in schools of any variety. So there's communities where there's amazing things happening, but mostly that's not the case. The opportunity we have here is to develop those.
No sound? Nobody can hear? I will try again.
Yes, I have the sound.
We can hear.
I can hear.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think you're okay. Yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Sorry.
I'll play again.
Maybe just people who don't hear the sound, try to turn it up on your computer.
Okay, I'll play again. Thanks all.
Healthy eating habits, not just about what they eat, but how they eat. And LunchLAB really builds off of that.
You really should come here because it has excellent food and you'll learn a lot. You spent so much time preparing everything, and then when you get to try it, it's like, wow, this is really good, and it was made by 12-year-olds. I didn't ever think that just a bunch of kids could feed 200 students, so it's kind of cool.
Lunch should be the most exciting part of a school day, and I'm really hopeful to see how LunchLAB can contribute to that movement here in BC.
All right, we now have a very short video from Brent, just saying why he's flying to Ottawa. Oh, I will play that in a moment.
Hello, sorry not to be able to join you live today. As you watch this, I am currently flying from Vancouver to Ottawa. Tomorrow, November 30th, I am going to be running 200 laps around a small portion of lawn in front of the Parliament to once again ask the Government of Canada to honor its commitment to $200 million per year for a national school food program. I'll start running at about 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, pausing at 11:30 for a media conference where myself and other members, endorsers, and staff from the Coalition for Healthy School Food will have the opportunity to talk to media. Thank you for all your support and well wishes. I look forward to continuing to work with all of you to make the case for why we need a national school food program in Canada.
All right, a big thank you to Brent, and I'm going to pass it over to Debbie, and Debbie, maybe you can touch on a couple of other aspects of Brent being in Ottawa and what it means. So over to you, Debbie, for just a very short summary of where the coalition is in terms of federal, provincial, territorial, and sharing promising practices for all our work.
Well, it's great to be here, and great that so many people wanted to come, that, we had our Zoom problem, and it is being recorded, and apologies again for the technology, and also for even asking people to pre-register. I know that's not something we usually do, but we're trying to know a little bit more about who's coming to these meetings. So, and we're going to go into our members planning meeting after this, which is very exciting. I was so struck by how well all the speakers dovetailed with each other. I just, it gave me shivers listening to it and thinking about where we've come. And I had the pleasure yesterday of actually joining the quarterly meeting call of the School Meal Coalition, which is where Amberley was in Paris. And it was just so incredible to be with people from literally all over the world who are all committed, as all of us are, to a healthy meal each day for every kid by the year 2030, which is, of course, the Social Development Goal year, something that Canada has committed to and that most countries in the world have committed. And one of the things they talked about is that this meeting in Paris happened, as you can imagine, in the middle of all the terrible things that are happening all over the world, the outbreak of violence in Gaza and Israel, continuing crisis, of course, in Sudan and Ukraine, and so many problems. And yet school meals manages to be this place of hope and nonpartisan activity in which people on all sides of any situation always are moving the needle forward. So each day, more kids around the world are accessing school food. And the school food movement is also beginning to look at procurement and environmental sustainability. To hear that France is joining Brazil with looking at local procurement targets, and their goal now is 50% local and 30% sustainably or organic produced. And Brazil, of course, remains a leader on this. Brazil is going to host the next School Meal Coalition meeting, and Lula, who's the president of Brazil, who done so much when he was the president before, is co-hosting this movement now with Emmanuel Macron, right? So we get these two global leaders saying that we can do this. So we really hope, Hugues, that the government will hear our what we heard. You will have noticed in Hugues' presentation how aligned the What We Heard report is of the principles of the coalition, something we're very proud of. Stef and Tammy's presentations and, address some of the questions that Hugues raised. And of course, Jean-François is showing how food literacy is an integral component of all this. So we're very excited. We're really hoping that budget 2014 will include 200 million. It is such a small amount. Several people always say to us, it's a rounding error in the billions that the federal government are spending. And so that's what Brent's going to do tomorrow. Brent is going to run around a part of Parliament 200 times. Carolyn and her sons are going to join for a little while. And Minister Sutz is going to come out and receive the letters. I know many of you were involved in your classes sending letters to Prime Minister Trudeau. So look for that tomorrow. And I think we maybe even have a minute or two for a question, Carolyn.
Yeah, we do. Thanks so much, Debbie. Yeah, I'm just always blown away by how much is happening. So just a big shout out to everybody for all of your work. We have one question about the School Food Summit and then a couple for Hugues. And I don't see any others, and I don't know if we have time for many, but if you do have other questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can try to address them in some way. Debbie, there's a question about when the date is for the next School Food Summit. Do you know?
I think it's 2 years from now, but we'll get that confirmed from Amberley. Yeah.
Okay. And then
somebody knows. Okay.
Amberley's here.
Oh, great, Amberley. Great.
Hi, Amberley. Amberley's on a train right now, but with internet. Great. So 2025. Thank you. That's great. We have a question. Hugues, avez-vous une date d'établie ou comme objectif pour mettre ce programme en place?
Donc, pour avoir écouté les présentations qui m'ont succédé, j'aimerais répondre le plus tôt possible. Mais ce que je vais répondre à la place, c'est je pense qu'on est conscient des besoins puis qu'on fait ce qu'on mieux. Et ce que je rajouterais, c'est que je pense que Brent et toutes les activités que la coalition a fait au cours de la dernière année et plus sont très utiles à faire avancer. Donc, je pourrais peut-être dire de ralentir, mais au contraire, je vais continuer de vous encourager à porter la voix et du besoin mettre en place la politique et le programme.
Merci beaucoup. Nous allons continuer. We'll switch to some English questions now, and continuing for you, Hugues, you're on the hot seat, I guess. Does the collaboration with other government departments that you mentioned include Health Canada, including Health Canada? Okay, I'll start again. Does the collaboration include Health Canada developing nutrition standards for programs to qualify for federal funding?
Yeah, I went pretty quickly on this one. So yes, it does. I think the short answer, it does. It includes, you know, the Public Health Agency of Canada, the Health Canada, Indigenous Service Canada, Crown Indigenous Relations, and obviously Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. It is a bit of a whole of government approach, which kind of in some ways speaks to what school food programming are. It's not just one thing, it's multiple things. And so yes, there are multiple partners in it.
Thank you. That's great to hear, because as you say, it does touch on so many files and priorities. And yeah, thank you for clarifying. And then the other question in that chat box was some language about that used about I think folks shared language about mitigating stigma, and the comment was that seems like measures to reduce the harm of a means-tested program rather than ensuring universality. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so again, maybe I went too quickly. So that's a great question. And so let me try to reframe, I think, what we've heard on that. I think just to be, so I think participants through the consultations made it clear that they support universal programming delivery model. You know, one of the points they made is there's no stereotypical hungry child. And so you need, you know, universality is certainly, I think, been strongly heard through the consultation. I think where stakeholders, I think, have been perhaps practical is realizing where we are today versus where is perhaps not quite universal just yet. So in a world where we are today, I think what we've heard is there's ways to provide stigma-free programming that even if it's not universal at the outset. And so, you know, they've provided multiple different ways about how that gets achieved and how can be done, from targeting particular students with a particular grade side, or considering socioeconomic factors, targeting students within a school or a neighborhood. So there's a number of things we've heard about how one can provide stigma-free programs, even in absent of, you know, being universal from the get-go.
Great, I appreciate you clarifying. I'm going to pass it. I think I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to pass it back to Debbie. She has a few other comments she'd like to make, and then we'll close the webinar.
Great. Well, that last question is relevant to what I wanted to also update on, which is along with all the work that has happened federally in the last year, we have seen so many impressive growths in the commitments of provincial and territorial governments. And of course, all of us were so delighted over a year ago now when BC created a new funding stream, $214 million over 3 years, which will make a huge difference immediately this year of over 60 or 70,000 in the first year. And then we have seen smaller increases in almost all the provinces and territories, including the biggest one in Ontario in decades. So there was the equivalent of a 6 million, 1 million, and then an additional 5 million just to deal with the higher cost of food. And then 2 weeks ago, Newfoundland and Labrador will be committing $10 million. And that's up from their commitment only 3 years ago of 500,000. So from 500,000 to 10 million in Newfoundland and Labrador, and that's per capita more than the BC one. So we all know that provinces and territories committing funding and working with the federal government will be crucial to the success. And so one of the things you'll hear more about when we talk in our members meeting is just the interplay between all the work that the coalition is doing in the provinces and territories, how that both feeds and supports what's going on at the federal level. And also just all the work we do around sharing best practices. And, you know, so again, in terms of Jean-François' presentation. We look forward to talking to you more on webinars like this over the next while. And many of us are going to be joining that next meeting. And if you get into any link problems, just send me an email and we'll make sure to get you in there too.
Thanks so much. Thanks to all of our speakers. Thanks to all of our participants who have come and asked questions and engaged. And I see some good connections happening in the chat box. So this closes off our public webinar event, and we'll be posting the recording online soon. And we'll also try to share whatever presentations we can, as well as some other links to those who have registered. So thank you. We will now be taking a break, closing off the public part, starting our members meeting in about 5 minutes at around 1:05, maybe 1:06. And if you are not a member, you are welcome to join and introduce yourself in the chat and be a part of it. But yeah, we'll take a break. For those of you who are signing off, it was great to have you. And just feel free to turn off your webcams, go stretch, have a break for those who are coming back. Thanks. And yes, someone asked, can you join the next meeting? It is a members meeting, but you're welcome. We invite guests. And so,
and one of the guests that we're having is actually MP Serge Cormier, who has been talking about his private members bill in the House, and he's going to be joining us at he's going to be speaking at 1:45 about his private members bill.
Thanks, everyone. Merci beaucoup. And yes, it's the same link. We'll just keep this open.